Lisa.
Muito obrigada por estar entre nós, Sr. Comissário. Tinha 3 perguntas, todas pedindo-lhe a base legal e a legitimidade democrática que as suportaram. Primeiro, comentários sobre os tribunais constitucionais dos países. Comentou sobre o Tribunal Constitucional Português, já comentou sobre o alemão ou outros tribunais constitucionais. Segundo, impor a países fragilizados processos de privatização e venda de golden shares, como no caso português, venda de posições na distribuição e na rede da eletricidade. É aceitável impor isto a um país fragilizado quando os preços estão baixos? E uma terceira questão, quando um Estado não tem condições para pagar, como é possível que o corte das pensões seja feito antes de outros credores serem penalizados? Admitiria que dentro de 15 anos a pensão que contratualizou com a Comissão Europeia fosse cortada em 40% se nessa altura houver problemas orçamentais na Europa? Muito obrigada.
Thank you. Thank you for the questions. Starting with Mr. Belder's question on the banking union, I do not want to go in specific detail here because, as you well know, this is mostly the responsibility of my colleague and friend Michel Barnier. I just want to say that the banking union and its construction is a crucial and very important endeavour for Europe now in the coming weeks and months, and I am very grateful that the European Parliament is taking this extremely seriously and carrying its responsibility in this regard. We need a banking union to ensure that we have a healthy and resilient banking sector in Europe, able to do its basic job, which is lending to the real economy, to the households and enterprises. I trust the Council and the Parliament will be able to conclude an agreement and legislative work by the end of March. That is indeed important, crucial for confidence in the European economy. Mr. Martin referred to some parts of the draft report and also to the question of democratic accountability. For the sake of time, I refer to my responses to Mr. Karas, to Mr. Juan Nock and Mr. Lamberts on this. And I want to say that we respect the two-pack legislation and its requirement on economic dialogue and accountability to the letter, both in spirit and to the letter. Mr. Gauzès made a very important point as regards what would have happened in case these programmes would not have been introduced. And I just say, on this I say 3 facts and 1 bottom line. The first fact is that the problems of the programme countries started well before the programme, and the programme has had to address these problems, not the other way around. This has very often been forgotten in the contemporary debate. Second, we as the Commission, we did prefer a community solution, but the euro area member states insisted on some more intergovernmental arrangements, and we had to adjust to that, and we had to also adjust to the working of the Troika and to make it work, as we have done, to my mind, reasonably well. And the third fact is that it is the euro area member states in the Eurogroup, in the ESM board, that decides the funding limits, which ultimately also frames the path of fiscal adjustment. And maybe as a fourth fact, yes, structural reforms are even more important than fiscal targets for the sake of economic growth and employment, but they are more difficult too, as we have seen in many of the program countries, and they require strong ownership. Look at Ireland or Latvia, look at Slovenia or Spain or Portugal. You can see that there is progress in terms of economic reforms and there is a rebalancing going on, but it is no doubt often a very difficult and sometimes painful process. The bottom line is, and I think it's important also to say this, even though this is theoretical, but I want to share this with you because you may not have thought about this. In the beginning of this debt crisis, in the early part of 2010, 4 years ago, the Commission could, in theory, I underline in theory, choose whether to get involved or not, because we had no mechanism, no stability mechanism in the Maastricht Treaty. So we could have just let laissez-faire, let it go and let things go to a catastrophe. But instead, we decided that that is not a responsible way of acting, and therefore we persuaded the euro area member states on the need of having a stability mechanism, which in the beginning especially was not an ideal one, even though it has been improved and evolved in the course of these past 2 years especially. In practice, to my mind, there was no choice because the alternative would have been a free fall and disorderly default, which would have been much worse both for then Greece and for Europe. And while certainly our work has within the Troika and as the European Union has not been always perfect and ideal because we live in an imperfect world, this strategy is nevertheless now producing an economic turnaround and the countries are successfully concluding their programs if they are effectively implemented, as proven by Ireland and Latvia, also by Spain and I trust soon by Portugal and also in the medium-term future Greece. Thank you.
Elisa, just to remind the Commission.
You didn't ask and didn't answer any of my questions. The legal basis, probably were lost in translation. What
legal base on what? Because I was really lost in translation because you were quite quick and I think only part of it was translated. Yes,
probably that's it. It was on the comments on the Constitutional Court that you make if you think you have the legal and legal basis for that, on the sale of strategic assets such as the electricity grid and the electricity distribution by a country that is suffering from a fragility, and why to China in the Portuguese case, and on pensions, why pensions among all the creditors of the state ranks higher than many other creditors in cuts, and if you'd accept that your pension would be cut in 40% in 15 years' time, if there is a problem in the budget of Europe.
I think Diogo also had some question about Portugal.
No, I put two questions about the first one about the negative things that you see in this program, and the second one about how you see the difference in the speech between the political players of the institutions of the Troika and the techniques that talk with the national authorities.
Thank you. These are all interrelated, and I will provide you a joint answer on this, because we have had many periods of challenge with Portugal. I think actually, as you asked about what was the most, let's say, worst or the most critical period, to my mind, it was in the run-up to the program, because we had discussions with the finance minister of Portugal much earlier than Portugal in the end requested a program, because it was quite clear already at some point in 2010 that unless Portugal takes very strong action on economic reforms and fiscal consolidation, it will face prohibitive borrowing costs, and it will face the threat of being left out of market funding, which then happened in the beginning of April 2011 and led to the programme. As regards your question on the political and technical level, I refer to what I said before in my response to Mr. Torvalds about how the Troika works. We have a very clear chain of command and method of dispute settlement within the three Troika institutions. These, of course, are related also to the functioning of the decision-making in Portugal. And I want to say that the Commission respects, in Portugal as in every member state, we respect the constitutional order of the country. Each member state of the European Union has, by definition, an EU-compatible constitution, because otherwise they couldn't be members of the European Union. Having said that, successive adverse rulings of the Constitutional Court clearly defined the constitutional parameters within which the government must act in terms of the budgetary savings measures. And in particular, the Court has interpreted the principles of equity, proportionality and legitimate expectations in a way that frames the available options in fiscal consolidation. And more concretely, some measures incorporated in the budget of this year will likely be scrutinized by the Constitutional Court, in particular those related to the wage bill and public pensions. A negative decision regarding the single wage scale, the convergence of the public sector employees' pension scheme to the general system, and the extension of means testing to survivors' pensions would have an impact, deficit raising impact of 0.5% of GDP, around 0.5% of GDP. Should a measure be ruled unconstitutional, the government has committed to find alternative measures that ensure the achievement of the fiscal target. No contingency measures have been explicitly defined at this stage because the government remains convinced that the package put forward is the best option to pursue growth-friendly and socially balanced consolidation.
And on the privatization of the electricity grid and electricity distribution, what is the legal basis for that?
It is a decision of the Portuguese government within the framework of the programme, which has then been codified into the memorandum.
Choice for pensions as well between all the creditors of the state?
That is also a decision of the Portuguese government in dialogue with the three institutions.
Okay, I'm going to take the last questions en bloc. We'll lose interpretation.